Hello, my name is Farrell D. Moore, and I'm your host today for another episode of Write. And today's episode is entitled The Werewolf Principle. Now, writers rarely listen to werewolves, and it's our laws. Well, it's true that this may be in some degree be blamed on the rather limited range of sounds they are capable of producing. They howl well and are not bad snarlers, but it's also a fact that when the full moon rises resplendent above the dark clouds to grace the evening sky like the queen of the night she is, writers hide behind their computers. Embarrassing, isn't it? Granted that no one wants to step out on a night where their neighbors may or may not be transformed into hideous werebeasts, but no one ever did or ever should assume that being a writer is safe. In fact, being a writer is dangerous work. And like the werewolf, writers live out their lives under a gypsy curse. But if it doesn't show up on Google, you probably never heard about it. I'll explain later in this short series why we were cursed, which gypsy cursed us, and all the details of how the general public can protect themselves from were writers. But for now, we all know how to break a were writer. It's not silver bullets. You know better than that. You want to know how to stop a were writer in their tracks? Just don't respond to any of the requests for you to like their newest release. Nothing weakens a writer more than no one responding to their latest effort. It's like pounding a stake through their heart while they're in a garlic sauna. It's the in-between magical strictures that we need to pay attention to, like this one. Writers look like everyone else. Sometimes not as good. How are you supposed to know that the 73-year-old woman with hair in her ears has been writing the lusty, bawdy, rowdy adventure fantasy you've been loving your whole life? Gag, as the late Janis Joplin said, is just another word for nothing left to puke. See that scrawny little guy walking down the aisle at work? The one who looks like he's been beaten like a rented mule? Bench presses less than the average 2-liter diet soda? Sounds like a cricket on coke when he talks. Yep, he's the one. He writes science fiction that can bend your mind. He has dreams more muscular than an Olympic wrestler. What happens to the old lady and the scrawny little guy to make them write like that? Metaphorical full moon. That's what. When the conditions are right, they let their inner animal free and then, look out. They're beyond human. They're were-writers. They turn into writing animals. It's an ugly scene, as though all their pent-up sexuality, their need to dominate, and every creative ambition they've ever repressed gets covered with wild hair, and they literally snarl their way through the manuscript. But not every night. Only the nights when the conditions are right. And wouldn't you like to know how to tell when the conditions are right? The full moon is coming. The highway leading to your creative world comes alive with crackling energy. You pace. You grow irritable. You don't want to be around other people. You want them to stay away, just plain keep their distance from you so you can write. The full moon is coming, and there is creative electricity in the air you breathe. You're about to change from that nice person everyone knows into a rather frightening individual. You're going to quit thinking about writing and actually write. Writers are different than most people. Beneath our outward humanity, we create dark mysteries, brutal crimes, brooding killers, and futuristic worlds where the judicial systems are manned by automatons and humanity itself is on the run. And fantasy, well, that's a very dangerous world to explore. All this before we take on the current rage, 50 Shades of Grey. How many times over the years have you wondered what kind of person created the suspense thriller you've been reading? The paranormal romance, the sword and sorcery novel that's been keeping you up nights? Or how about that erotic masterpiece you read when no one else is paying attention? Would you know the writer if you stood next to them in a checkout line? They look like everyone else. Did you really think Stephanie Meyer or Tom Clancy or Stephen King or H.K. Rowling looked different than you or I? but in a fundamental way, they are different. They too, like you, are linked to the waxing and waning of the moon. They too become different people when they write. Is the fact that they are more successful to you in any way linked to the fact that they actually allow themselves to slip deeper into that new identity, that they allow themselves to be more completely transformed? And are you not completely letting go of the reins of your day-to-day identity when you write? Answer me this, but think about it first. Are you really the same person when you're writing? Don't get defensive. The things that you make your characters say, they're not really coming from you. You wouldn't say those things and mean them, would you? It's just a story, right? I think we do transform on those nights when we really write with power. I think we become different people. It's a curse, of course, which is something we very much share with the werewolves. And we can't help it. We love the power flowing through us when we write. How about you? Do you become a different person when you write? Let's make a theoretical concept. Let's say the guy in the middle is a writer. His name is Elmo. He wants to write an action-adventure novel or a paranormal romance, or maybe even a western or possibly a suspense thriller. The problem is, Elmo is kind of geeky. His life is average. He plays online games a lot and hangs out on Facebook because in-person crowds make him nervous. Girls don't think he's cute, but he'd like a hot date anyway. His dog likes him, and he saved the neighbor's cat from being run over by heroically dashing out into the street, grabbing it up, and diving for the grass, but landing on the pavement instead. The cat freaked and scratched Elmo's arms and back. Elmo broke his right big toe trying to run away. Do you think Elmo, as Elmo, will make a strong narrator? Does he need to change his personality to be a strong narrator? Is anyone going to want to read what Elmo writes if he's writing using his real identity? He can't make life work in his favor. Do you really think that makes him qualified to be a strong writer? You and I can be supportive and tell him it's the power of his desires and his imagination that will make his fiction both dramatic and compelling. But Elmo wouldn't believe us. Elmo's praying for that full-blown full moon transformation to become someone people will want to listen to. So he's thinking, he's torn really. Nice guy or evil wild man? Which way to go? Who would be the better writer? We really and truly are someone different when we write successfully. But the question is the same as every werewolf has faced throughout the centuries. Can we control who or what we become when the full moon of writing illuminates the inner recesses of our minds and hearts? I've studied alchemy for many years, and the entire discipline is built around the concept of controlled transformation. Oddly enough, my alchemy teacher was also my finest writing instructor. In alchemy, we have a concept equivalent to the Eastern idea of the yin-yang integrated economy, and it is known as the law of contraries. As in the case of the yin-yang, there are many practical applications that evolve from the concept. Perhaps the most important for the writer is the idea that polarization or difference creates motion, and without a writer's thoughts being in motion, no story will be forthcoming. In the physical world, we know that if we heat air for a hot air balloon, the hot air balloon will rise because the gas density of hot air is lighter than that of the surrounding cold air. Difference is initiated to create motion. But what has this to do with writing? It was my teacher's contention that whenever a writer immerses in an aspect of his or her personality, that they are creating tension between their waking mind personality and the emphasized aspect. This tension arises because of the struggle for dominance. The emotional and mental energy thus created is what we use to write fiction. In the long run, the waking consciousness of a writer will emerge victorious, for no one can stay immersed in the mental state of a writer for too long and stay sane. By the same token, no gifted writer can focus only on the everyday waking world and stay sane either. But why is this? I was taught that it is because gifted writers were torn between two worlds. In my early days as a student of the creative sciences, I found little use for such concepts. Practical was all I cared about. Prove it. Where's the peer-reviewed study? If it's true, why is it on YouTube? You get the picture. Now, I think, and I really mean this, we should spend less time on themes, character arc, and the rest, and concentrate on how to achieve controlled transformation, elucidated in the werewolf principle. We should pay more attention to the effect that the lunar circles have on our writing spirit and less on writing workshops. Why? Because writers do transform when they write. Are you a writer? Examine if you say yes. Examine yourself. You may have the same body, sit in the same chair, and type on the same keyboard you always have. But when you are at your creative best, the people who know you will wonder if it was really you that wrote what you did. Writers who do not control the transformation of their personality when they write really have, by extension, little control of their story. What I was taught was that to elevate their writing, writers must study themselves as much and more as they study the basic mechanics of writing. Good tools, I was once told, are useless without good workmen. The question is how to control the transformation. What's going through your mind? Action, romance, dialogue, danger, mystery, intrigue, love, lust, and larceny. Wait, you're really just sitting in front of a keyboard, aren't you? You've transformed, you've immersed, you've lost track of reality. You were writing. The fire alarm could have gone off, smoke could filter into your room, and you'd cough and gag while your eyes started to burn, but you'd stay there so you could finish that scene, wouldn't you? Just a few more lines, and you'll be done. Returning to a reality after immersive writing is the problem. It's the same problem a werewolf is faced with when it returns to humanity. The argument is that we can, in one sense, be nothing other than what we are. That there are different sides or faces to us. Returning war veterans know this all too well. Is a soldier that kills their enemy the same person they were before they lifted their weapon or when they returned to home and worked next to you in the office? Or are they someone else? They have the same body, the same face, and the same brain. Or do they? Consider someone who has had a near-death experience on the operating table. They too have the same body, the same face, and the same brain. Or do they? In one sense they have. In that physical evidentiary sense, they are the same person, but their experience has changed them. They have done or seen something which radically changed their identity. Radically changed their identity. Our sense of identity is not so easy to categorize. We are, in a way, not yet scientifically validatable, different people after such experiences. To enter the imaginary world of our own fiction, the same occurs to a lesser degree when we are immersed as readers. But we must change ourselves. The gatekeeper between the world of imagination and reality will not allow us to step through this from this world into the world of creative fiction as we are. We must transform to be admitted. When we return, we too are changed. We change our consciousness to write. We must change back in order to return. Now, in the late 18th and 19th centuries, enterprising paranormal investigators pursued the art of astral projection. They claimed in their journals that their consciousness actually left their body and was able to travel through walls, journey around the world, and see things and situations no one had ever seen before. Kind of like what writers go through every day. When astral projectors returned to their body, they felt a snapping sensation and usually heard an audible click. If only it was so easy for writers. Sometimes we return and feel like we've just woken up after a long sleep. Sometimes we jump up from our chairs, energized by that last scene where we just finished saving humanity. If someone else sees us, they surely know we've been in a virtual reality trance, or sometimes they think we've lost our mind. If you think of it, though, this return is the evidence that we've been gone, that we transformed and are just returning to who we were before we immersed in our writing. It's easy for others to see. Maybe we should think about how to control this necessary change. It's more important than you might think. We might consider how to consciously initiate and end it, instead of pretending we don't know what's going on. Why? 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 because it is the secret to beating writer's block. Writer's block occurs when you can't transform. That's all it is, plain and simple. We take our immersive transformations in writers for granted. And because of this attitude, we never study the phenomenon closely enough to master it. Writer's block is the inability to immerse, to transform into the creative state. It afflicts us because we assume that we can change whenever we want to. But this naivete is our undoing as writers. In conclusion, I would have to say you must study the werewolf principle. Learn the techniques to control the transformation, and you will never, ever again experience writer's block. Now, that's all for today, but you may tune in again. We'll have another episode of Write.